This is where I see the biggest cash flow in the midterm rental sector. It's undeniably a model that any smart, savvy investor would grasp onto. If I had to guess as to why the pace has been so slow, I would think it's just one of those conservative mentalities that it's too good to be true. But again, that's okay.
Nate, we are so excited to have you on today. I am thrilled for many reasons. Nate is not only my cousin's husband, but truly one of the dearest friends that I have. Somebody that I get to talk business with and real estate with. And he's just been so fun to bounce ideas off of. He's one of those people that will listen to what you're saying, really think about it, give you great answers. And if there's something he's not sure about, he researches it. And it's just really, really fun to talk about all this stuff that we're into. And I've never seen a real estate agent go above and beyond like this man right here. So I'm so excited to have you on today, Nate. He's also helped us with selling 2 of our homes, buying 2 of our homes, and then also recently helped us with our recent arbitrage house. So Nate, you are a wealth of information, and we're just excited to have you on today. I'd love to kind of have you introduce yourself, tell us what you do, tell us about your family, and share whatever it is you'd like to share.
Wow. Well, thank you. What an introduction. Am I all those things? What a good guy.
You sure are. And then some.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. My name is Nate McAfee. I am a broker associate with Montemary & Associates at RE/MAX of Santa Clarita. And like Kelly said, I am married to her wonderful cousin, Anna. We have 2 young girls, 14 and 11. We're involved heavily with softball and all kinds of other teenage things. We lead pretty busy lives, like I know most everybody else does as well. And we're kept on our toes. So, real estate is my passion. It's what I love to do outside of the family. And so happy to be here today to chat with you guys.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Yes. We call Nate Real Estate Nate. He is the go-to real estate agent. Tell the people where you work and how did you get into real estate?
Well, my primary location is obviously here in Santa Clarita. It's where I live. It's where I was raised, where my wife was raised, where we're currently raising our kids. But we don't have boundaries here. You know, we've done and do transactions as far south as San Diego. And we've gone way north for certain things. But generally speaking, Ventura, Oxnard, is as far as we go on a regular basis without referring to some of our close associates up further north, if those things come up. But really anywhere in the state, primarily Southern California here, and Santa Clarita being our base where we do most of our business. Getting into real estate was kind of an accident. I was in the holistic medicine field, wellness, vitamins, supplements, on a retail basis to start as a teenager, and then in a manufacturing capacity with a partner who was also a realtor for RE/MAX, still is, since 1989. And that's kind of how we were raising capital at the time to fund our launch of a product called Viva Vitamins, which is still active and out there. And, things would come up where he would need an assistant to sit an open house or to go show property or to just, have phone conversations, in some cases do, mild negotiations or whatever. So that's how I got my feet wet in real estate. I didn't really, at the time, I wasn't paying attention really to the homes I was living in, aesthetically wise or how they were built or anything like that. But in just a few of these like random appointments, being exposed to some of that stuff, home inspection and termite inspection and, just going out to see different style homes and stuff made me realize that was something that was really cool and that I was, really interested in to learn more about. And so that was in 2007. And so I went out and got licensed. Didn't do a whole lot. I was still, fully vested in that business we were running at the time. So never hung my license anywhere, but did get involved with the learning process, and then went full-time in real estate. We kind of swapped. He went back full-time to the vitamin business, and I went full-time to real estate in 2014. So we're on our 10th year.
Wow.
This year, doing this full-time.
That's fantastic. I love it. So exciting. Okay, I want to talk about just kind of the current state of real estate and interest rates and the market, and just kind of get your general feedback on what you've been seeing, what you're thinking. Let's leave it at that first. I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something we talk about on a daily basis because everybody's got the same question. What's going on? Is it a good time to buy? Is it a good time to sell? Is it time to sit on the fence and rent? And obviously, every situation and case is unique, so the answers can be different. But in talking about the overall general state of the market currently, it's very quirky. In the 10 years that I've been in the business, and all the other years just watching from the outside, and certainly networking with people that have been in the business a lot longer than I have, that we connect with on a regular basis. This is a unique market, one of which even longtime veterans of the business have not seen. The reason for that is that we have a huge inventory problem. This is a national problem. This is not a local problem. But every market is a little sub-market of a broader picture. And Southern California, because of the population, is sort of a magnifying glass of that particular issue. There are just not enough homes, obviously, and affordable homes at that, by far. And so people have to make an uncomfortable decision a lot of times on affordability, first and foremost, not necessarily what they want or what's best for them or their families, which is unfortunate. The quirky part about it, and the reason I use that word quirky, is that typically in a situation where it's just an inventory issue, prices go up, but interest rates come down. It's that, give and take that's typical, and that's not what's happening, right? Obviously, we've seen interest rates since COVID be on this really crazy roller coaster ride. First skyrocketing up, a lot of people remember the sub 3%, the 3.5% that a lot of us are lucky enough to have, but would like to make a move out of. And that's where affordability comes into play, is getting out of a 2.75 or a 3% rate to go take a 6.5% rate just doesn't make a lot of sense in any case, really. And so it's kind of that has stalemated a lot of movement. And with interest rates going up and prices going up at the same time, there's an affordability issue. Mm-hmm. So this is typically the time where, we're bustling and booming. And, it's very strange because things, if they're priced correctly, because of the lack of inventory, there's enough of a pent-up buyer demand out there that things are moving quickly in all price points, particularly in Santa Clarita, if you price it right. But there is no room for stretching right now, as we're seeing. So that market where, you price yourself 5 to 10% ahead of the previous comp to continue to push the market up, which is the trend. The prices are increasing, just not on a massive scale, more of a normal scale. But that's gone. Buyers are smart enough or unwilling to overpay at this point. So it's very interesting. And specifically in the last few weeks, this is also interesting. We've seen the rates come down. They've come down over the previous 3 weeks. Actually, 3 weeks ago, they stalemated. 2 weeks ago, they came down about 0.1%. And last week, they dropped almost 0.25%. So We're at 0.35, 0.4%, nearly half a point in the last 3 weeks, month. And the movement has slowed with that, which is, again, unique. It's unusual. It's quirky. So it's hard to say, what we're going to see moving forward. I can tell you a couple of things that most people probably already know. But when interest rates come down, there's a pent-up buyer demand out there that is going to flood the market. The problem is there's not enough homes for those people to purchase. That will create a bit of a frenzy of the likes of which we've seen a few times since we've come out of this pandemic. There'll just be more buyer demand than there is inventory, and sellers are going to get. It's going to be a seller's market again at that point. But what could also happen, specifically if we get a quick influx of inventory, is we could see massive sell-off too. So we could see inventory rise fairly dramatically as well. And that would sort of even out the market, possibly. So you could see prices go down in a situation like that too. So it's this scale kind of thing. And we just have to see which one weighs heavier when something happens, because something is going to happen. And it's not going to be that we're going to build, whatever we're short, 2.5, 3.5 million homes, quick enough to house people. That's not what's going to happen. The interest rates are going to come down. How quick they come down is going to have a big effect on what happens. And, pricing, we'll see what happens with pricing, due to how many people are willing to sell. So if I had to take a guess, you guys, specifically since we're not going to get into politics here, right? But specifically since we're heading into an election year, I think the rates are going to continue to come down. I think my anticipation in January was that they would already be down with a 5 in front of them, in some capacity, high 5s, maybe mid 5s if we were really lucky. We hit a blip because the inflationary numbers came back around March, much worse than anticipated. Rates, everything we made ground on in the first quarter went away overnight, at the beginning of April. And so we've kind of been working backwards again from 7% and currently sit like in the mid to low 6 range. I think that's going to continue to relax a little bit. And hopefully by November, end of the year, certainly in Q1 of next year, I think we'll be hopefully in the 5.5, maybe high 5 range. And if that happens, I think the fear of people, holding out for that 3%, I think people realize that's probably not happening. It's not happening. And I think that's kind of the golden goose number is somewhere in that 5 range. I think that makes people go. And so that's what I anticipate. I anticipate a really strong end of year and Q1, Q2 being really good for real estate overall.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing as well. I feel like this season we're in right now is a little quirky, like you said. And with the election on the forefront of everybody's minds, everybody's anticipating that rate dropping, and it's just a matter of when, right? But with that said, what is the current situation? I guess, is there opportunities to be found between now and that time if the rates do drop? I mean, we all would love the crystal ball and know exactly when.
Yeah, of course.
if they come down, but like if you're an investor and you invest in rental property, is this a good time to pounce? If you're a first-time buyer, is this a time to just kind of wait? I mean, every real estate agent, and you would probably echo the same, it's always a good time to buy.
It's not every case. Okay. It goes back to the uniqueness of every situation, what the needs are of the family, of the person moving up, moving down. People are going to get relocated. People are going to have to move for different reasons. There are unfortunately divorces and deaths in families, and there are assets that need to be liquidated. So there's never going to be a situation where for everybody it's a no time or it's a yes time. And it's like you said, to your point, if we had a crystal ball, we'd all be a lot better off. It's very, very difficult. In fact, it's impossible. You would end up lucky to guess the market perfectly correct, meaning, you're selling on an upswing and you are able to buy in a downswing. Those turns come and go, but we can't predict them. So it comes down to the case, the reason, the motivation behind it. So take an investor, for example. Is it a good time to buy? Absolutely. Absolutely. The prices are trending upward. There's no economic factor that's pointing to that changing. What that increase is normal right now. But in the past, it's been as much as 10% in a year. But you have to ask yourself, as an investor, what are you in it for? Is it just an equity position? Are you a buy and hold? Are you going to live in that property for a period of time? Are you using it as a long-term rental, a short-term rental, or like we're talking about today, a midterm rental? Is cash flow more important to you? Which for most investors, cash flow is going to be, the equation, the economics that you're looking at. And in that case, the possibilities are endless. And the market and what the prices are doing doesn't really affect when it's a good time to buy. It's more on the selling side. If you had to unload that asset, then that's something you take a look at more closely. But, we call it breaking it down to the ridiculous. So as an investor, you just simply have to do your mathematics and run your numbers and make sure that at the bottom line, you're making the margin that you're out to make. And, if you can afford it, then the price doesn't make any difference, right? The interest rate really doesn't make any difference because the payment is the payment. And you've broken it down, you've vetted your numbers and run everything through. And of course, investing has risk, but this is why I love specifically the iMTR model is that, in my opinion, it's the lowest risk, highest reward, model that is out there that can be seen, that you guys are putting out there that really is behind a cloak still, even to the most seasoned investors. It's pretty amazing. But yes, there's risk involved. Absolutely. The risk in this case, or any midterm, any rental for that matter, is vacancy rate, right? You can factor in your deferred maintenance. You can factor in all your taxes and all those numbers. The vacancy rate is the variable. That's the scary thing, right? But with the iMTR model, vacancy rate doesn't go away as a risk. That's the main risk. That's why I say it's probably the least risk, because it's one of the only risks, right? Because when you get that home rented, at least for that 90-day minimum period or whatever it is, then the insurance is covering it and backing that payment. You don't have to worry about non-payment. You don't have to worry about evictions for reason of non-payment anyway, or anything like that. So it's always a good time for investors to be buying, depending on what their need is and what their motivation is and what their numbers say at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's great. And correct me if I'm wrong, Nate, but one of the things that I love that you've always told me is not to worry necessarily about the interest rate. Just make sure that you can handle the payment. And I love that. That's what you've told me, right?
That's correct. There's a saying. It's easy to remember. You say date the rate and marry the payment, right? You can always refinance your interest rate. The one objection I always hear from that is, well, the amortization, scale rolls back. In other words, if you've been in a 30-year fixed loan for 2-3 years and you go refinance it because the rate dropped, it's going to drop your payment, but sure, it's going to reset the amortization scale back to 30 years. But what you have to look at is what's more important, right? Cash flow. It comes down to cash flow again, right? Lowering that payment and putting a few extra bucks in your pocket to take a vacation, to fix up the house, to do whatever with, is usually far more enticing and important on a month-to-month basis than resetting a 30-year loan, which most of us never will see the end of anyway. Because we're typically moving on between 7 and 10 years, whether it be out of the community we're in or up or down in the same community we're living in. So That's it. Yeah, you don't worry so much about the rate. Again, break down the numbers. If it makes sense to you and you're comfortable within that ridiculous bottom line, then you don't worry about what the house costs and you don't worry about what the rate is specifically, because that rate will come down. You can refinance and have an opportunity there to lower your overall payment in the long term.
Yeah, that's great. And I know for us, I mean, we're always looking to invest and looking for new properties. And I feel like the numbers that may not make sense for, say, our primary home, you know, having a mortgage, say it's $6,000 here in California, that seems crazy. But for us as investors with the iMTR model, I mean, I don't really want a payment at 6,000, but you know, you're around the 5 or 6. I know that we can still probably list it for
again,
13,000, and then we still profit on it. And so I'm
right.
always, because
down to your numbers, right? Yeah, you guys have a model, you have a bottom line that is acceptable for you to go to. And as long as you stick to your model and it works for you, then the numbers are just the numbers. They all break down one way or the other. And if it makes sense, it makes sense. The bigger numbers get scary, but you break them down and there's profit and there's loss, you know? And so that's what it comes down to.
awesome.
Absolutely. Yes. We love cash flow here at Vetted Homes. That's what we want. Yeah. I was just curious, in the last, I don't know, like 6 to 9 months, have the majority of your clients been more investor types or more like first time buyers? Like, what's the demographics been like for you?
You know, it has been and is always all over the place. You know, again, we work with everybody. We service all kinds of different needs. Since the pandemic, since we've come out of the pandemic, I would say specifically here in Santa Clarita, we've had a lot of move down. We've got a lot of generational owners whose kids have flown the coop, gone away to college, started their own families. They've got big houses that they don't need to hang on to anymore. That, you know, other families with young kids are looking to move into, because that's what Santa Clarita is with our great schools and family atmosphere of suburbia. I would say, if, you know, we had to break it down into percentage, that's probably what we've dealt with the heaviest. In fact, we just closed one that was really interesting, that we've done in the past, but it's not really the right market for, we call it the train. And this is when you have multiple properties contingent upon one another having to close in order to have success for everybody. And it started with, we were representing the two front end. So we had the home that was initially sold to a contingent seller who then had to sell to another contingent seller. So we had a train of what ended up being 5, and we controlled the first 2. And it was, I mean, they're always really stressful anyway, because, you know, it's not stressful enough. Everybody has their own home inspections and their own, you know, things they have to look at within their own transaction to finish purchasing the home and get it to closing escrow and be comfortable with that. But you put 5 in there. That was really unique. And 3 out of the 5 were moved down buyers. So they were going to smaller homes, you know, downsizing. So I would say that's probably the biggest percentage, but we are working with investors. We actually have investors that are both buy and hold investors. We've got a couple flippers, believe it or not, in this market that are having success. It's not gangbusters like it was, and you really have to vet the numbers and look. But we're working with those. We're even working with a wholesale, you know, investor at this moment in time. That you know, that's a numbers game, but they have had the same amount of success lately as they did, you know, 2-3 years ago when things were, quote, you know, better for investment. So yeah, it's a good time out there, you know, for any investment, as long as as the numbers work out and you find that right place in the right area for whatever the situation may be.
That's great. That's helpful. Thanks, Nate.
Now I have a question. Can I turn it on you guys for a second?
Sure, of course.
Do it.
I think this would be beneficial just in terms of the MTR and the iMTR, right? I just kind of wanted to point this out because this is something I think about all the time. And I have these conversations with investor clients that are thinking about, most of it comes up, MTR comes up very, very rarely, unless I bring it into a conversation. It's really not a thing. I get most of my buy and hold talk about Airbnb or VRBO or, short-term rental, right? And that conversation usually looks like, I need to be near a beach or like a high tourism area, right? Some kind of like metropolitan city area, beach, vacation type. But correct me if I'm wrong, with the MTR and specifically the iMTR model, aren't we looking for kind of the opposite of that? And if that's the truth, for what reason is that kind of key?
Yeah, great question. Mostly looking for areas where there's lots of home owners. So home ownership's a big thing. The suburbs are usually a great area. You're kind of looking for homes that have families that live in the area. So when some sort of catastrophe, fire, flood, something happens to their home, they want to stay local. And so we recommend densely populated areas. Sometimes right outside major cities is a good location because there's a lot of home ownership. So I feel like that's kind of what we're looking for. We focus on single family homes, and even to be a little more specific, we like ones that are either single level or they at least have a bathroom and bedroom on the bottom floor. That's something we find. Fenced in yards to stay pet friendly because lots of families have pets. 3 to 4 bedrooms is kind of what we look for. And does that?
Yeah, I would say like a ultimate, like a B+ to A+ neighborhood is great. Good schools, specifically for insurance. Like I tell a lot of people, like people that are listening to this that are familiar with Santa Clarita would know Granary Square. But I'm like, if you could find the Granary Square in every major US city in the nation, I'd buy a house there just because it's an older neighborhood and some of the houses are starting to break down, right? So there's like plumbing leaks. And it's right next to really good schools, right in the center of town. So yeah, I mean, if you have the nicest, newest, most updated house in the oldest neighborhood, you will crush at iMTR for sure. So it's a little bit different than like a beach house where you're doing Airbnb, or some mountain cabin. Definitely a different mindset for sure. But man, it's pretty lucrative just being in those neighborhoods that are desirable. Like people don't want to alter their lives. Like if their kids go to Valencia Valley or go to their school down the street, they don't really care about going to the beach, for 3 or 4 months. It'd be nice if the school was near the beach, then yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
But they just want to resume normal patterns of life, where they live. So
yeah. And with the iMTR model, they're looking for usually a home within 10 to 20 miles of their existing home. So home ownership's a big deal for that, for sure.
Yeah. That's okay. That's what I thought. That's what I find so unique about this. And I think that's what people have a hard time like mentally digesting, is that the typical investment rental property is somewhere glamorous and high trafficked in terms of tourism and comings and goings. And this is the opposite of that. And I think that's difficult for people to kind of, digest, just mentally grasp.
Well, yeah, and we're finding that it's a mindset shift even with like landlords and investors. Like a landlord, I don't know, every investor, like you mentioned, invests in property for different reasons, but a lot of them invest for like the appreciation, right? It's a long-term play. The cash flow might be $500 a month if you're lucky, and they're just looking to break even or make a little bit every month. But with the iMTR method, it just blows their minds. They're like, holy crap, I can get that appreciation and I can also cash flow like $5,000 to $10,000 a month. And they just don't, it's like a mental block, right? It's like, I don't get it. I don't understand. Wait. So yeah, we're finding that it's kind of like a two-step process. Like it's a discovery, like you mentioned, like it's kind of hidden behind a veil and people are just like, what midterm rental? What is that? But then when they realize, okay, I think I understand, and then we kind of, our community members are like sharing numbers, and they're like, yes, this has changed my life. Like this has replaced my W-2 income, or like my parents, they're fully retired and they're making probably the same amount of money, maybe a little less than they were when they were working full time. So it's like, yeah,
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, one other thing that I wanted to share, excuse me, that I've learned from you guys in creating script, for these kinds of things to share with other investors, landlords, owners that aren't aware of this, that may not be able to comprehend this. One thing that I remember from the get-go and that I see used, and you guys I know talk about quite often, to help people understand, and it sounds like a sales pitch, but it's not a sales pitch, it's real. One of the coolest things I see about this is because there is turnover on a semi-regular basis, right? It's midterm rental, but 90 days, 120 days, sometimes longer than that. But because there's turnover more often than once a year, you guys, whether you own the property, you're technically the landlord, or you're arbitraging. In either scenario, you essentially have a property manager or an owner that's going in there on a much more regular basis than a long-term rental. And what that does automatically is that allows upkeep of a home much better than laying eyes on it maybe once or twice a year and having to work around a family that's in there with a schedule. I mean, you have the opportunity to go in there and keep things up as opposed to go in for major repairs a lot of times, because you're in there and seeing it. And there's a motivation there to rent it again for a high profit margin, which requires a nice home, right? A home that's functioning properly and a home that is set up really nice. So that's a cool thing, specifically if we talk about the arbitrage model, right? Where you're essentially subleasing someone else's owned property. And if you look at that, and there are a lot of them out there, right? You look at the investor that is just looking for the long play. They want security. They're on the conservative side. They don't necessarily think that your model is going to work. But an easy selling point is, hey, look, I'm almost like a property manager without having to pay the property management fees, because it's in my best interest too to keep that property up, to keep it dialed in, to keep it nice, furnished, from aesthetics all the way down to the functioning systems that a house needs, to operate. So I think that is such a win-win for the midterm model as a whole, that people would have to choose not to understand or not to consider as a perk, fear or whatever. I don't know, but that makes sense regardless of which way you go. And I think that's really cool about the MTR model.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned it earlier, like the biggest risk for this model is vacancy, right? But in our neighborhood, we just had a home turnover. The tenant had been in there, I think, 14 years. And I don't think there was regular inspections or regular maintenance done on that house. And it took the owner a good 2-3 months to rehab that entire house. And that was 2 or 3 months of lost income, granted, 14 years, that's a lot of consistent income. Absolutely. But you make a good point. Like our homeowners or property managers, whoever the homeowner chooses to quote unquote manage their property, they're getting eyes on the property regularly, and they're addressing issues. Plus, I mean, we love talking about cash flow, but when you make all this extra money, you can reinvest it in your property more regularly, right? Like you don't have to sit and wait until things break. Like it's okay, like let's just every turnover, let's work on something. And you have flexibility with your property. Like, okay, property's gonna be vacant for a couple of weeks until the new person moves in. Let's take care of something on the list. And it's a great point, like you can get in regularly, check on it. And what we, educate our community members to do is just to constantly get in there, clean it, evaluate. We have a whole checklist of items to review and to turn over. It's a definitely a more emphasis on hospitality because we care so much about the people that are going to be in our homes. Like they've just experienced some horrific tragedy, right? So the last thing we want them to do is experience the same tragedy in one of our homes.
You're right.
We place a high emphasis on hospitality, making sure that these homeowners are well taken care of, for sure.
And safety.
Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest perks that I see as an overall. It's like I said, it's a win-win. Can't think of a better term for it. It's a win for everybody.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Nate, I have a question for you. With investors looking, even us specifically, I know not everybody has an amazing real estate agent like you who's in our corner giving us fantastic advice just all around. And I feel like that is a gift that you have, that you actually care about people and you will give us the best advice, even if it does not benefit you at all in some sort of real estate transaction. But for those who are trying to invest out of state, and I know you've helped us do that as well, you've connected us with amazing realtors out of state. But what advice would you give if somebody's looking for a realtor out of state and they don't know anyone in the area and they're trying to kind of vet a real estate agent? What are some things that you would say, look for this to be somebody that could be really helpful and in helping you with the transactions?
It's a fantastic question. The first thing you would do is, and this is true, generally speaking, everybody knows 5 realtors, right? That's just the reality of this business. That doesn't mean that every realtor that holds a license is a good one or well connected. So the first thing you want to do, if you have a trusted advisor already, go to them, because a good real estate agent that's on a good team under a good brokerage flag is going to network. And we network all the time, weekly basis, locally, monthly basis, nationally, regionally, I would say. National, there's a couple of things, there's events to go network in and make relationships all the time. And as part of a good business, having a referral network in every nook and cranny you can possibly make one is a plus. It's just part of your toolbox, And so that's what we've really prided ourselves on, is networking, both in-state, out-of-state, in all different areas. So that's what you want to do if you've got a trusted advisor already, is go to them. Ask them about their referral network and where you're looking to go, and if they can, lend credibility to anybody in that particular area that you're looking to go. If that's not the case and you don't have a trusted advisor to go to, there's a couple of things that you look for. Number one, if you can get boots on the ground, that's the best way to go. Which means obviously taking a trip to that particular area and spending a little time there asking questions. And it's essentially an interview process, but you can whittle it down. You ask locals, and a lot of times you're going to get the same names come up, because this, like many businesses, is a flooded industry with a lot of different names. But generally speaking, 2 to 5% do majority of the business. And those are the ones that you want to go and talk to, specifically if you're brand new to an area with no affiliation or no network there, whether that be family, friend, or professional. If you've got nobody to lean on, that's what you're going to have to go do, is at least pick up the phone and call around and ask those specific questions. Who would you work with? Who would you recommend I work with? And once you hear the same name 2, 3, 4 times, then you put a phone call in and schedule an interview. So it's, that's the way I would go about it. That's the way I would suggest going about it. That's the way we refer, because every once in a while it will come up where we just don't have anybody that we trust or have worked with in the past, or feel comfortable putting our reputation behind in an area. And so we will do that for people as well. So that's another, thing you can do is, lean on somebody local in your area and ask them if they would mind reaching out to their network base for referrals in that particular area. And chances are somebody will know somebody, or they'll go ahead and make phone calls on your behalf and find you someone that has good experience and, maybe even do that interview process for you. But the easiest way is to find your local realtor and have them suggest somebody in network out of area.
That's great advice. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about just kind of your future and what you're thinking about regarding real estate, purchasing, arbitrage, anything you have on the horizon that you've just been thinking about. I know we always have all the kinds of stuff.
So this is where my wife and I, we are like oil and water, but we get along so well, right?
Yeah.
My high school math teacher, by the way. So she's a special breed too, but on the total opposite end of the spectrum. So she's very grounded, and I like to have my head in the clouds, specifically regarding real estate. So I don't know where to begin with that question. I want to add on to my own home. Realistically, I would like to make an expansion addition to my own home. And I would like to pick up one or two investment properties in the next 18 months. I'm still deciding whether that's in state or out of state at this point. They will certainly be midterm rentals, both of them. I'm not looking at this point to do any buy and hold. Technically this would be a buy and hold, but I'm not looking to put any long-term leases in those properties. I'm also always looking for arbitrage opportunities.
Yes.
And we run a property management company as well within our team. I don't work on that side of things, but it's a little bit unique because the opportunities oftentimes come to us. They're established. They've been around a long time. And so always looking at those opportunities for the right areas, the right type homes, those kinds of things. It runs the gamut, right? Like, I guess if I had to break it down into a 5-year plan, I'd like to pick up at least a property a year to get into this midterm game.
That's awesome.
Because I think although competition is going to grow, the cat's kind of out of the bag on this thing. It's a niche that is becoming more mainstream, even though it's a lot slower than I anticipated. And I don't know the reasons for that, but kind of okay with that, to an extent. I think it's undeniably a model that any smart, savvy investor that likes cash flow would grasp onto. If I had to guess as to why the pace has been so slow, I would think it's just one of those, conservative mentalities that it's too good to be true. And fear is completely blocked out, any, possibility of taking a risk and trying it out. But again, that's okay. This is where I see the biggest cash flow, the biggest opportunity for growth is in the midterm rental sector. Another reason too, just since we're throwing out, everything onto the table here is, I'm sure most people are aware that with the short-term stuff like the Airbnb and VRBO, call it the weekend model, there's restrictions popping up over that. There's problems with that. You have people that live at the beach. You have people that live in these touristy areas as long-term regular residents. And when people come in 2-3 days and party and are loud and, the trash things and just cause nuisance, that's a problem. And that's why you see restrictions coming up. This midterm thing is totally opposite of that, right? Where you're really helping families that are in need, specifically on the insurance side, right? But anybody that's going to rent a place for 90 days, 120 days plus there's a reason. It's not a weekend party, right? There's a reason. And usually that reason is a need. And so not only are you helping people, but why would there be restrictions on it? You're bringing families to communities, generally speaking, that are contributing to the economics of it, to anything else in a good way. And I don't see that as ever being restricted. The only thing I can possibly think of is that somebody in government would decide that they're making too much money and yada yada. So that's yet to be seen. That's a possibility always. But again, it comes down to risk. There's always risk. This is kind of the lowest risk out there. So that's my goal, is to get more heavily involved in it. I will never stop, helping people buy and sell real estate. I really enjoy that process. And believe it or not, in Southern California, as difficult as that can be at times, it's still an enjoyable process and it's a rewarding process. So that's not on my radar to stop doing. But if I don't have to, then the pressure is off, and I think this is a model that really legitimately can bring enough income to, like you said, replace or secure or get places faster in terms of financial goals and retirements and things than anything, including standard buy and sell of real estate. So it would just be ignorant, I guess, to not try and incorporate that into the fold. And in terms of investments, there's no other thing to focus on, in my opinion. When, if you're not looking at the highest profitability model, why are you investing? So that's my take. And those are my short-term and long-term goals. They're the same. Short-term, I hope to accrue about a property a year. That would be, that's the goal. That's the goal.
I love it. Well, and you and Anna are just amazing, determined, hardworking people. So I'm excited to watch you do it and help you guys along the way.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah.
Hey, I have a quick question for you. So we have a couple guys in our community, our vetted homes community, who are honestly like super brilliant, but they're young and they're intimidated a little bit by they can't necessarily buy yet. I mean, they've saved well and they're financially really, really smart, but they don't necessarily have enough yet to buy a house, but they have saved enough to go the arbitrage model.
Mm-hmm.
But I see the hesitancy in them because of their age, and trying to explain this, because a lot of this is discovery for people where landlords haven't really heard of it. And as soon as you talk about any type of short-term, midterm rentals, they immediately think Airbnb, and they're like, no, I don't want Airbnb in my properties.
Yeah.
So they're trying to figure out how to word it and how to come to homeowners specifically. But the hardest part is we're finding there's a lot. I mean, obviously there's a lot of for rent by owners, but there's also a ton that property management companies are holding. So they're kind of asking and wondering, like, how can I get in with property management companies? Or is there any way that we can? I mean, I know I've had tons of problems with that, where as soon as I say what I do, it's just like, oh, nope, not interested by. And I think because we sound very similar to them, we're not property managers, but it sounds so similar. I think it's like, oh, no, we don't want to do this. But what I want to tell them is I will give the price that your landlord's looking for. And, obviously they get their cut on it as well. And then I will rent it and take care of it and all those things that we talked about earlier. But do you have any advice or insights on kind of talking with property management companies, and then separate from that, I guess, and landlords and owners?
Yeah. So let's start with the property management. And it's a good question. And it's a difficult one because these people are operating a business same as you are.
Sure.
It shouldn't be that way, but this is kind of the mindset of a lot of business owner, right? Which is the opposite of your mindset and my mindset, unfortunately. But it's that it's like, you remember they call it the pyramid schemes, right? But all business is built on a pyramid, whether it's a pyramid like this or it's an upside down pyramid, right? It depends on where the pinnacle is. And for old school business mindset, it's the triangle like this, where there's one person standing on the top and they're just trying to beat everybody down the slope to prevent them from being overthrown. And unfortunately, that's kind of the mentality that you're going to run into a lot. And so first thing I would say is you got to have thick skin, and you have to recheck your motivation all the time, and realize that just like anything, like the greatest sport on earth, baseball, if you look at the Hall of Fame, it's a game of failure, right? If you bat 300, you're in the Hall of Fame. That's 3 out of 10. A business is exactly the same. And specifically in this business, and when you're going to talk to a management entity that has now taken responsibility for a landlord and taken the onus off them for negotiating, because they don't want to give anything up, I think you just have to keep having conversations. You're going to get stonewalled a lot of the time. I don't have a magic like script or cue card, to break those walls down. Building relationships is key in any business you're doing, but specifically in the business of any sales or in this case, renting, subleasing, arbitraging, purchasing, any of that. It's a relationship thing. You have to build trust. So what I would do is I would, run through, the Rolodex of property managers, whether this be they're looking at specific properties in areas or they're looking at specific areas. I would just start trying to find a relationship within there, right? Take somebody to lunch, make it about them initially. Hey, I just want to learn more about your business and what you do, and maybe not give them a whole lot of information right up front until you can have that face-to-face meeting, and then try and build a partnership that way based on trust, because it is, again, when you boil it all down, it's a win-win, and they know it's a win-win too. They're not giving up any rights by subleasing it or arbitraging it to you. You're still under the same standards and laws and things that anybody leasing the property would have to be. There's no difference there. And so it's an educating process, but it has to be built on trust. And that's a difficult one because that may take some time to nurture. Now, you could just pick up the phone and beat the phone and eventually find somebody that says, yes, that's another way too, which is just the quantity model, right? But I don't know that would help you in the long term, specifically if you're area specific. If you're looking in a certain area, you think you're going to grow your arbitrage business in that area with multiple properties, I think you want to start on the relationship and start with one property management company that gives you the time of day to have a meeting, start building that relationship, and then, try to accumulate more. If it's more property specific, then it may behoove you to just speed it up and just beat the phones and see what you can get right out of the gates. But at the end of the day, it's always good to build good relationships. And chances are, if you think it's a good business decision in a particular area, for one, you're going to go back, at some point, and it may be right for 2, 3, 4, 5, half a dozen, whatever the case may be. And now you've got a partner in there. And with property management, it's like I said, with ours, those opportunities come to them. So this is now not a situation where you have to go into the classifieds and be contacting for rent by owners now. Now you have, it's like you guys with the insurance companies, right? You're building these relationships so that when they have a need, they reach out to you as trusted advisors and trusted partners. It's the same situation. When something comes along and then they reach out to you, they give you the opportunity. Hey, this person is open to this, or hey, this fits the exact model you're looking for. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, in the center of town. It's perfect for your model. Why don't I set up a conversation with this landlord for you? And then you just take it from there. So it can be, what I would tell these guys, specifically the youngsters that are, and I don't know, I'm guessing, and just based on what you told me about them, it's a total guess. I could be totally wrong. But, we are kind of psychologists, right? We have to communicate people the way they want to be communicated with, or you lose them. So a lot of times with these younger guys that are really smart, specifically financially smart, they're analytical. They don't like confrontation. They don't like conversation a whole lot. Face to face kind of freaks them out. They'd prefer texting and emailing and those kinds of things. So I'm just guessing there too. So that might be, something that specifically you tell them that they need to overcome, and that the best route would be to pick up the phone, or, better yet, show up, with a little gift, and a blue shirt on, because the color blue invokes friendliness, and, and introduce themselves that way, and just nurture the relationship really slowly. Provide a little value up front until you can get a sit down and learn about them. Ask a lot of questions and try not to talk a lot, initially. And then there will be a point where you can, talk about yourself and what you do and how you can help their business, and you guys can help each other. I know that's a super long-winded answer, but nurture a relationship would be my recommendation. And you just have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and be prepared. Like, if you can find a way to look at the failures as a success, because what it all boils down to is it always comes down to math, and there's always a number, right? And as you have more conversations, you're going to get better at your numbers. But let's just say it takes 10 conversations when you first start out to get one yes. That means you're going to get 9 no's, and sometimes they're going to be doors slammed in your face, and they're going to be hangups, and they're going to be leave me alone and never call me again. And they're, they feel a little bit harsh, but it's not a personal attack. And once you can turn that mindset into seeing that as a success, because you're like, yes, I just got the phone slammed on my ear, 8 times. That means in 2 more, I'm going to get a yes, then you'll get a lot more comfortable with failing, quote unquote failing, because there are successes in numbers, and relationships are the long-term success. That's when you build enough relationships in enough places, that's when you can get away from having doors and phones, slammed on you, because it all comes down to trust. It's like, it's human nature that we unfortunately don't trust before we trust. It's like guilty before proven innocent almost. And it's just, especially these days, it's like when we were growing up, you guys, when someone knocked at the door, everybody was like all excited, like, who's coming over? Like, what's happening? Now someone knocks at the door and everybody like hits the floor and goes like, did you call somebody? Like,
right.
Why is someone at the door, kind of thing. So it's even harder these days, but you got to build that trust. You got to show value. You got to show people that you care, that you're not out for yourself to make a quick buck. You're invested in what you do. You are passionate about what you do, and you're willing to help, whether there's a paycheck at the end of the road or not. That's how you build trust and rapport. And that's what gets you out of the rat race, so to speak. And it gets a little easier down the road, but it takes time to build relationships and build trust.
Oh man, that is so good.
And I will point out too, I remember being that young kid, right? And not necessarily in this industry, but I've been in sales most of my life. And being that young kid with a little baby face, and you're not real polished on your personalities and your conversations and the way to talk to people, it's difficult, because you even have more of a stigma against you that, hey, you have no experience. Why would I trust you? Kind of thing. It's difficult. So there's kind of a lot to overcome there, but it boils down to, don't be afraid to fail, and recheck your motivation, refuel your motivation all the time, because it can wear on you after a while. It's not always going to be 1 in 10. It'll percentage wise, it's going to boil down that way, but you might get 30, 40 no's before you get a yes, and you got to keep going because they're in there.
Yeah.
So good.
No, that's so helpful. Well, and we might as well take this opportunity, as we're speaking to a bunch of people, worldwide, that we do know some amazing young men and women in our community and just in general who would love an opportunity to rent your house out and sublease it and take care of it. So, and Nate being one of them.
Yes.
So if anyone,
Yes.
feel free to reach out to us at Vetted Homes as well.
If you're interested in helping displaced families find a safe place to live, reach out to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We could definitely help you.
So Nate, let's talk about how people can find you, because you're, like I've said before, I mean, I could toot your horn all the time because you really are phenomenal at real estate, at caring, at helping people, at digging deep, at doing things above and beyond when you don't need to. And you have never once said, my question is not a great question.
That's a stupid question,
You give
Kelly.
versions, you repeat it, ask. I mean, you really have been amazing, and we're so thankful for you. And I know that I can run every transaction by you. And if you give me the go, I 100% go for it. So I would love, if there's anybody in California looking to buy or sell their home, that Nate is amazing, obviously. But how can people find you, Nate?
Yeah, well, first, I really appreciate the trust you guys have shown in me over the years, and the network that you've opened me up to here now with Vetted Homes too. So super appreciative of that. Yes, I'm not hard to find, I hope. I can be reached on my cell phone at any time at 661-714-1207. That is my business line, but my cell line, it's in my pocket all the time. So call at any time. I can be reached by email too, and hopefully you'll put this one up in print. It's a long one, but it's Nate, my first name, Nate, at Bringing You Home SCV, is in Santa Clarita Valley. So bringingyouhomescv.com.
Awesome.
And you can read the screen below at some point.
We'll definitely include it in the description below for sure.
Yeah.
I must say, in a former life, I interacted with a ton of real estate agents, probably 20 years of interaction. And I know from experience that a lot of real estate agents wear multiple hats. I always used to joke, whenever I saw a real estate agent doing something that wasn't real estate specific, I'd be like, oh, what hat are you wearing today? Whether that was like pulling weeds or installing smoke detectors or whatever, it's like not in the job description, but it's hilarious.
On our couch.
Well, I'm getting there. Yes, but I know that, it's what you do, and along the lines of trust, there's so much more than just, being a real estate agent. I've seen you move furniture. I've seen you go above and beyond for your clients. I thought maybe we could close this interview with just you sharing some sort of story in your career where you maybe had to take off the real estate agent hat and put on a different hat.
Oh yeah.
For the benefit of your client, to help them get a deal done.
So many times. And oftentimes, and I want to preface this with, I really enjoy this part. I always have. I've got a past in personal training and retail and all kinds of different, sales things. But I wear my white coat most often. That's my psychiatrist coat. This is an emotional thing. This is we're dealing with people's largest asset. So we pride ourselves on being trusted advisors, right? But that, you're right, that comes with a lot of different hats to put on or tools to have in the toolbox. There's so many unique ones. One that sticks out in particular was we were selling a home for a great family that had a need to leave the area very quickly. And this house was in a great area in an awesome community, without an association, to bark up your tree, so to speak. But pride of ownership was, abundant. And for whatever reason, the landscaping company that was maintaining the yard after these people left just apparently stopped coming. And we had an open house scheduled for a Saturday. And I had to go over there to hang a lockbox and do a couple of things on Friday. And I was shocked at we're talking grass that was, and I had been there no more than a week prior, but grass was like a foot tall, and it needed a good once over, leaves needed to be blown, whatever. So I went over there in my slacks and I was showing property later that day, and I had no choice. I had to run home, grab the lawnmower and some rakes and stuff, and go over there in the middle of the day. This was summer, so we were, pushing triple digits, and mow the lawns and blow the leaves and, clean the place up.
Yeah.
That was, looking back at it, I'd love to laugh at that kind of thing. But at the time it was just like, oh my God, am I really going to go, do this now? You just had to, buckle down and do it. And we had a really successful open house for that weekend. And we actually ended up closing that particular deal, like $25,000 or $30,000 over asking, with multiple offers, which probably, I can't say wouldn't have happened, but may have been a little more difficult, had gardener Nate not showed up. So,
worth every drop of sweat, right?
It's how I look at it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. There's been other things too. I had, when I first started, I was showing a home to a couple that I had met at an open house just the weekend prior. And I dropped something while we were in the garage, bent down to get it, and the butt of my pants just completely ripped all the way down my leg. That was really fun. They were really cool about it. She actually gave me a sweatshirt to tie around my waist for the next 3 or 4 homes that we had to see. But that was fun. There's all kinds of things. I mean, we could go on days about these things, but yeah, it's that's kind of the fun of it, man. You get to do a whole lot for people in different aspects, and a lot of time, again, we go back to California. It's getting more difficult to do some of these things for people just because of the restrictions and the lawsuits and things, which is unfortunate. But we stretch the boundaries as far as we can stretch them, and we do absolutely anything within our power to do while staying above board, in a difficult place to do things. So I like that. That's the diversity of it is attractive to me. That's what I like about it. You really, at the end of the day, with a lot of these things, you make friends, and a lot of them lifelong friends. And we keep in touch. We touch base. I take people to lunch that I've done one transaction with 10 years ago. We stay in touch with most people, and you go through emotional processes like these together, and there's a huge level of trust built, from those. So that's the cool part of this job. That's what I really enjoy.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great way to end this interview. Once again, if you are a home buyer, home investor looking for real estate in the Southern California area, please reach out to Nate, Real Estate Nate, our dear friend, realtor extraordinaire. Amazing man, as you guys have heard. So thanks, Nate, for your time today. We really appreciate you.
All right. We love you, Nate. Thank you.
Yeah. You guys, I love you too. And likewise, check out Vetted Homes for any of you investors that are looking for an opportunity, a nice, lucrative opportunity. I think you should take a look. And I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me this morning.